All right, we are live, Dale.
Hey everybody, it's Dale Jr. and we are live on our YouTube channel. Obviously, you guys are tuning in for the first episode of the Dale Jr. Download this year, Season 10. This is the Ask Junior part of the show. We're excited to be going, doing podcasts again. With me is Mike Davis as usual. Matthew and Leah are in the booth back here, editing and producing and whatnot. We just had Red Farmer come in here. He just walked out of the room, and we had a great conversation with him, and we covered a lot. I mean, this is a couple pages of notes right here about Red, and we talked a lot about this stuff in here, but we also got a little personal, a couple things that he's experienced that I think a lot of you people are gonna find pretty profound. But anyhow. I'm kind of decompressing from that conversation that we had. We've been in here for about 2 hours talking to Red, and it's just incredible the career he's had. And anyhow, Leah's, put out on our social media handles at Dirty Mo Media to get your guys' questions coming in for this year. So, Leah, let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah, our first question coming from Ryan Goodrum. Where do you think the gray areas are with the next-gen car?
The gray areas, oh, man. You know, when you look at this car, some of you that are watching this today are going to have a chance to get next to one of these cars throughout the year. And I think when you do that and you kind of are able to look under the hood or really get an idea of the suspension and all the components, you're going to see a completely bare platform or landscape for these engineers to work on. And I think that now with all of the components, there's all new places and areas for them to get creative in. And when I say creative, I mean cheat. And so I think that it's going to be a very, very difficult task for NASCAR to control all the creativity that these teams are going to try to develop. And, you know, there are honorable men in this sport, but there's nobody in the sport that's going to race by the rule book and strictly stay there. Everybody that's racing in this sport is always looking for an advantage, a loophole in a rule, or, you know, everybody reads a rule and interprets it differently. We've got a whole new rule book about an entirely new car with the independent rear suspension and a lot of other components. All of the rule book is either brand new or had to be rewritten. And so now when you have that new language, all those guys that are on these race teams, the engineers and crew chiefs, are going to interpret that language and that rule differently. They're going to look at a word or a sentence, and they're going to try to find a way to manipulate and poke holes in that defense, and try to, when I read the rule, this is what I understood, and then they can win appeals and so forth based on that interpretation. We've done it in the past, and we've seen appeals be overturned because, and then a rule have to be rewritten with new language to circumvent what creativity or what cheating was going on. So, man, when you look at this race car, you're going to basically see so many opportunities, so many new places, so many components that could be, messed with or fooled with. The problem is, and this is where it gets difficult, all of these components are bought from a manufacturer. And whereas in the past, a lot of the stuff that was on the cars before was handmade, fabricated, created in the shops by CNC machines that they owned. And so they could really build and create things and do things how they want. Well, now that you're buying these components, the rule is that you're not allowed to modify them. You're not allowed to shape them or change them in any way, shape, or form. So if a team wants to try to get creative, they're really putting themselves in a very dangerous position because NASCAR can look at these components and know when something's been modified. And when that happens, expect NASCAR to come down heavily, extremely hard, right out of the gate to set a very strong precedence that the teams are not to be fooling with these race cars. I would liken it to an example of when the wings came into the COT. So the COT comes out, and we've got wings on these cars. There's these wing braces that NASCAR mandated that we use. And this was a new thing for the sport, to have a wing and have a wing brace and all that on the back. Before, we had spoilers, and it was either this angle or it wasn't. And so when the wings came in, a lot of teams saw it as an area where they could try to manipulate. We did that. Tony Jr. did that. We took a car to Darlington with some wing braces that had been changed, and NASCAR found it quickly. We didn't get into the race with the illegal part, and NASCAR gave Tony Jr. a 6-week vacation. So I think that if you fool around with any of that stuff, you're playing a very dangerous game. And it's a little bit different than the creativity that we might have seen in the sport in the previous 5 or 6 decades. This is an easy ball or strike call for NASCAR. That you bought the component. This is what it's supposed to look like. Here's your component. You've made a modification. This is an easy ball and strike call. There's no gray area. So it's a very dangerous game because I think the penalties out of the gate will be excessive because NASCAR wants to send a message to keep the teams from doing any of this stuff. But NASCAR in the past has made the mistake of not being, strict enough or not being harsh enough, I think. So it'll be important for them to really, drive the nail home when these guys do get creative with these cars. So they'll have to be harsh with the penalties. It's difficult for me to say that as a car owner because obviously I don't want to get a terrible penalty or a harsh fine. But in the name of credibility and keeping things fair, if I was NASCAR ruling the sport, I would be extremely difficult and harsh on the penalties, especially with the next-gen car.
Next question from Mac watching live on YouTube. Do you think there will be attrition issues this season, or was it because of racing in an untested environment that we saw that in the clash with the overheating and the transactional issues?
Yeah, I was surprised, I think, like a lot of people, to see the failures. But then when, obviously when we all started thinking about it, we're like, well, yeah, this is a new car, new components, the transactional independent rear suspension, and a lot of new stuff in this car that hasn't really been tested in race conditions. You can go practice, and we see the guys out there practicing and carrying on, but they're not. If warming up the tires is what broke the transaxle in Reddick's car, as we've been told, well, nobody's doing that during practice or testing, right? So there's race condition. There's things that happen in a race that you probably don't do in a test, and so yeah, we saw an oddity crop up, and it does worry me. I think as a driver and or a crew chief or a car owner, it raises the concern of the durability of a lot of the parts that are getting built by these manufacturers. And as a broadcaster, as a fan, I think when the car is delicate, I think when the parts mileage out before the end of the race, I think that's a great thing. Now, we don't need everybody breaking transactions. We don't need everybody failing parts and so forth. But I think that the potential or that dark cloud sort of hanging over all the time, the possibility that the car might fail you is something that, we've absolutely lost in this sport. Now, in the last decade or two, the engines are very dependable. There's rarely any real, mechanical issues. Parts had been redesigned and improved into iterations that were indestructible. Right now, we still had things break and from time to time, but when I look at when we go to the 24 hours a Daytona race, you had part failures and mechanical failures all the time 10, 20 years ago. All the DPIs might fall out of the race, and a GTD car might win the overall. You're never going to see that now. Those cars are bulletproof. In a 24-hour event, just about all the cars, are designed to be able to run and safely get to that end distance without any problems. So I am not concerned as a fan about a part failure or brake failure or any kind of problem with the car, because I think that potential and that anxiety and angst is a good thing, if I can explain that right or articulate that the right way. But as a driver, car owner, I don't want parts breaking for sure. I don't want something like that taking me out of the race. But the potential of that happening is kind of a good thing to the suspense of the moment. So we'll see. I'm sure that, whatever issues that are going on, if they're if they become common or reoccurring, the manufacturers will fix this issue. They don't want to have part failures. So that's a hell of a responsibility to build a part for the series that these guys all have to use, and your part is failing. They'll fix that.
Next question from Patty James. What surprised you the most during your Hall of Fame induction?
I think what surprised me the most was the passion that the staff at the Hall of Fame has for that weekend, not only for the building and giving people a great experience that come in there every single day, but I thought that it would be very uniform and kind of not a going through the motions kind of thing, but it would be, all right, this is what's next. Let's go. All right, this is what's next. All right, come on, we're going to get you over here and do this. But now they're very passionate about you going into the Hall of Fame and that you are having this incredible experience, that you feel celebrated, and that everything is a great experience for everybody in the room, the fans that are part of the Q&A, the jacket ceremony, the other Hall of Famers that come, their families and their friends, media, NASCAR industry. The staff at the Hall of Fame wants to be there because they care about the sport's history and the fact that the sport is celebrated. When you go to the Hall of Fame, it's obviously a place where we remember the people that are inducted, but it also tells you it encompasses the entire story about the sport. If you want to know what NASCAR is and you don't know anything about it, the Hall of Fame is where you're going to get that education. And so the fact that all of that really, really matters. Those people that come there either are employed or volunteering, they want to be there, and they want it to be as good as it possibly can be. And so it makes that place a special place. You can feel that passion when you're there. And a lot of thought goes into everything that they do and every decision they make to make that experience for the person that attends the Hall of Fame a good one. So it made me feel, the Hall of Fame is a hallowed place that you worry about it. You care about it, right? Just like you might for Daytona International Speedway or your home track, right? You want your home track to last forever, to succeed. I feel the same way about the Hall of Fame, and it gave me a lot of confidence and assurance when I was going through the process that it's going to be there for a long time.
Next question from Jordan Simony. What's your favorite Cup Series paint scheme that you've seen so far heading into the season? That's a great question. I'm still taking it all in. I'm not going to say which one I think is the best. If it's got painted rocker panels, I'm going to love it more. An interesting detail came out here in the last couple of weeks. We're starting to see these cars show up at the racetrack and seeing some renders and so forth, and not many cars with painted rocker panels. And that was interesting because you would assume that would, we got to where everyone was painting side skirts, and most of the cars would come to the racetrack with the side skirt included in the design, right? Because it looked better. And so this new car, not a lot of teams are painting the rocker panels, and people want to know why that is. Well, in this whole process of getting ready to present this car and put it out on the racetrack, the manufacturers at some point claimed ownership of that space. The manufacturers always are looking for great ways to have some brand identity. So when you look at the race car, you recognize immediately that that's a Chevrolet or a Ford or a Toyota. And a lot of us will look at the front of the car, other areas of the car that it's obvious to you what kind of race car you're looking at. They wanted a little bit more opportunity and some more areas to work in to be able to create some brand identity. And so they are using that rocker panel and some of the tailpiece or maybe some of the nose to decal or wrap or create some kind of a unique design that's unique to that manufacturer. And they own the space, right? Now you'll see some cars out on the racetrack where the rockers are wrapped or painted, and it's probably going to be the teams that have a lot less financial support. They're not a key partner
with a certain manufacturer, and they have a little more freedom to be able to kind of do what they want to do. But the 47 car of Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he wrapped his rocker panels. Does this stuff really matter in the grand scheme of things? No. If you love paint schemes like I do, and you're pretty particular about what your race car looks like, and you do look at the field and go, I love that paint scheme, or I don't, that sounds ugly. If you're like that, it matters, right? So to each his own. It'll be interesting to see going forward. I think it's a misstep, for the manufacturers to claim that spot. I never liked that. When I had a race car, right? You're going to build a race car, Mike. We're going to go in this shop, and you're going to build your race car that you're going to take to the racetrack. And right when you're getting ready to paint it, you've put a lot of thought into your design, right? Where are you going to put your decals, how your sponsor's going to look on the hood, what your number's going to look like. And then I'm going to come in and say, this part, you can't do anything with that. That's mine. Mm-hmm. And, and so that's what I don't like about it, right? No. I decide what my car looks like. No one else has any involvement. No one else interjects no opinion or no decision but me, because I've been building my cars or taking my cars to the racetrack, and I'm going to have that influence on what they look like. So I always hated it when, you'd make the playoffs or whatever, and Sprint would turn your spoiler yellow or put a yellow number on the roof of your car. You're like, what in the hell, what are you doing, right? Leave my damn car alone. I don't want yellow numbers on the roof.
Especially back with the red Bud car. Like, that used to be just hideous, like a McDonald's car or something.
And the best rebuttal to that is, well, you're lucky to be in the playoffs. But that's true. I mean, Monster turned a few things green. And it didn't, not every car looks good with green spoiler, right? I mean, I hated that. It always annoyed the hell out of me. And it didn't matter to them. They could care less. They just wanted that brand identity out there running around the racetrack. So, I don't. That's the way I feel about it. But what was the question? I don't even know what the other question.
What was your favorite scheme this year?
Favorite scheme. I didn't have one.
I think, I'll be honest. The number slid forward. I'm over it.
Yeah, didn't disrupt the experience.
I'll be the first to admit I fought against this as hard as I was willing to fight. I still would prefer the number in the original spot or slid back. That's my preference. But where it is, it's fine. And there are some guys that are doing some really great work with how to make that look great, right? There's some cars where the sponsor it works in that space with that number slid forward. So I thought it was really going to have an effect on how I enjoyed racing, but I'm not sure it's going to.
No, yeah.
Hey, man,
I was
apprehensive about it.
It was not invasive. I wouldn't know that until afterwards. Yeah. But I realized, oh wait, I just watched that whole thing and the numbers didn't even occur to me. Yeah. The fire suits did. The fire suits bugged me, but not the numbers or the cars.
I saw some ill-fitting fire suits, and that was surprising to me. And you mentioned it on social media.
Yeah, it looked like they were, advertising for NASCAR Snuggies or something, like bed sheets. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Why didn't why did none of them fit?
I personally had the same opinion, but kept it to myself. I was surprised at you, but you get in a sharing mood on race day.
After Truex went down, it didn't.
If there's a race or a Alabama football game going on, this guy is popping off on social media.
That's not true. Not true. I stay off Twitter during Alabama football games, but during a race, I absolutely have observation. Listen,
leading up to.
Hey,
it was AJ Allmendinger's that made me go, okay, I got to type something.
Okay.
I mean, it's like
AJ was a tipping point.
Yeah, it looked weird.
Just to update you on what you said with the skirts, with that deal. Protective coatings now, vinyl. Up to 0.03 inches thick can now be securely applied to the rocker box assembly, as illustrated in the picture that I just sent you guys. So I guess it's an update or something in the rules. Good. So we'll see if the teams actually do it now. So
that's not good. So in those red spaces,
I guess, I don't know. Yeah, it's a little.
That's for a heat situation.
Yeah. So I just got an update from somebody in NASCAR who's listening to the Ask Junior saying now that they will have the opportunity to wrap it.
I see. It's highlighted. Vinyl may be applied to the vertical surface of the rocker box. So that's good.
Yeah.
And I think, if they're going to open that up and allow them teams to, put some color there, that would be great. Because, man, when you see the difference between the scheme, the same scheme with or without it, it really looks much better with the rocker included in the design. So if NASCAR is changing or influencing people to do that, I love it.
And thank you, Jim France, for listening to our YouTube and sending that to Matthew.
Yeah. All right.
All right, one more question. It's actually our most asked question this week. Everybody wants to know, where can we watch the download this year? So I think, Mike, you have an update?
Okay, so the answer to that is Peacock. It's actually going to start in mid-March, so it's not starting this week. The reason it's starting in mid-March is because of this little event called the Olympics. But that's what we know. Like, it's going to be Peacock, and it's going to be in mid-March. I'm not exactly sure the date. We move on with our podcast, and we do our deal. So we get the information from NBC and Peacock.
Yeah.
So that's the deal. Now, when NBC takes over, I've heard rumors that we'll have airings on the USA Network when the NBC part of the NASCAR season comes in and Dale Jr. goes to work and that deal. I think we'll see some stuff on USA Network. But, that's the deal. I hope that answers. There's a lot of questions about that.
A lot of questions.
And, until March, we put so much of our content, clips, the highlights, big moments on our YouTube page. You're here if you're watching, this, but for the people listening to the podcast later this week, Dirty Mo Media, their social handle and their Instagram, their Twitter and Instagram is a great way to be able to see some of the show, right? You're going to listen to all of it to be able to hear the entire interviews, but to be able to catch some of the highlights and some of the animation in our faces and so forth is it's always great to watch some of those clips. I know I watch them even though I've done the podcast. It's fun for me to kind of watch the videos and you see some things you forgot.
That's
so
it.
That's it. All right,
yeah.
everybody. I appreciate everybody tuning in. We're gonna wrap up our show every week with Ask Junior. Ask Junior is going to be at the back end, and we shuffle every year. We kind of move things around, trying to improve on what we're doing. So, Ask Junior is going to close the show every week when you listen to the podcast. So, appreciate everybody for tuning in. I can't wait to get this season going and build momentum. We've got one of the new things this year to show you guys how excited we are about our podcast coming back and starting this season is where we've got a bunch of guests already booked. Usually we're booking guests literally like the day before the show. This year we got about 4 or 5 already in the hopper. So excited about that. We got some great ideas. We're going to have some return guests as well. It's about time to start cycling back through some of the folks from years ago. So this is going to be a fun year, man, at the Bojangles studio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Red Farmer was great. Thank him, that Hall of Famer. He came in here and gave us the best interview. It's always awesome to catch up with those guys. So we'll see y'all next